At first, when I saw it, it took me a second to figure out what it was. It was long and green, and it started slithering down his arm. And very slowly it wrapped around his wrist, and then pulled his head back and bit right into his hand. We're going to talk about it on today's podcast. Hi, my name is Michael Johnson. I'm a ballroom dance professional, a life coach, and a peak performance expert. I'm part of a group of motivated people who are dedicated to attaining emotional mastery and unlocking our full potential. We've realized life is a dance. The ups and downs can spin you out of your mind, but it's time to take back control. It's time to become a lifer. We don't believe others are responsible for how we feel. In fact, we don't believe anyone can make us feel anything. We are a new breed of overachievers. Emotional mastery is our journey, and unlocking our full potential is the key. Welcome to the journey. We are lifers, and this is Magic for Life. What's up, lifers? Michael Johnson here with the Magic for Life podcast. Thanks so much for joining me today. And I'm wondering what you thought and felt about the intro. Interesting kind of idea. For those of you out there that are afraid of snakes, maybe you visualized that and maybe you took it to heart and it kind of creeped you out a little bit. When you hear things and imagine them in your head, you can actually bring to life that emotional state or that fear or any emotion for that matter, right to your forefront of your feelings. And, you know, some people just don't like snakes. They can't stand them. They don't like them at all. However, I had to get used to this idea of snakes because my third child, my Jaina, loves snakes. She loves to hold them and pet them and always wants to go to the pet store and see if they'll let her play with the snakes. And so, of course, I couldn't show any fear. I had to actually step up and hold the snake as well, because at first she wanted to do it, but she didn't want to do it, right? There was that intrinsic fear, that fear from the inside that maybe something could go wrong. Well, cut back to the story I started to tell you at the beginning of the podcast, and the other night my son brought me a video of this man that had a green snake, just about maybe a little thicker than your thumb. And it was slithering down his arm, wrapped his way around his arm, and bit his hand. And it just tried to sink its little teeth into his hand. And it's sitting there with his mouth on this guy's hand. He didn't budge. He didn't budge at all. And I'm not sure what it was. Maybe a garden snake or some small little guy. And the guy said, I'm not angry at the snake, and I'm not mad at it. It's just trying to defend itself. And so it's doing what it knows how to do because it was afraid for its life. So obviously, if you haven't gathered, today we're talking about fear. And fear is an emotional response to a perceived external threat that may include like rapid heart rate, widening of the eyes, tightening of the muscles, increased sweating. At least that's one of the definitions you can find on the internet. If you look at the specific definition from Oxford, they talk about being to be afraid of something or someone as likely to be dangerous, maybe painful or threatening, right? These things, like an unpleasant emotion caused by the belief that someone or something is dangerous, likely to pain or threat or something like that. So those are all the definitions you can find on Google. So hopefully saved you some time from looking it up. And the idea that I'd like to maybe hone into based off of what we're talking about with the snake and the fact that it actually did bite this guy. He was playing with it and messing with it. And, as he talked, he said, it doesn't hurt. I've been being bit by snakes since I was 4 years old, he said. And I'm not afraid. And I'm not mad at the snake. It's just doing what its job is to defend itself, to preserve its life. And so you go back to what fear is all about. Well, it's sort of built into us for a lot of things because we have this fight or flight reaction that we have to deal with as humans. And that was built in from a long, long time ago, right? You see a big, huge cat running at you and you have no way to defend yourself. That could mean your life. That huge cat could have eaten you. Maybe it was a jaguar at the time and cavemen or something, right? But the idea is simple. You act or react, and if something big like that's running at you and it looks like it could eat you, you're probably going to run and you're probably going to think about it second or flinch. And this is the idea, right? We're trying to preserve life. And so the idea of fear was initially built in because if there wasn't something built in that told us to be afraid of things from the outside, then we could basically have a loss of life. So this idea was meant to be able to protect us. So fear was built in to our systems to protect us. Now, a lot of things have changed since the caveman days, and things that really can't harm us anymore actually were built into our autonomic system for us to be afraid of. And those are things that we would have our fight or flight action and reaction show up. So something scares you and your first reaction is to jump or to move away from it. Well, that's simple. That makes sense, right? If you don't know what it is, it's better to be safe and protect or preserve life than it is to not, right? And it was always interesting to me. If you think back way, 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 way back to your time in middle school, and the boys used to play this silly game where they'd go to pretend to punch you, and then if you flinched, they'd go, "Oh, you flinched, ha, 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 ha," as if you were supposed to not flinch. But it was a built-in system. It's a fight or flight system. Doesn't make sense that you would want to train yourself not to flinch. In fact, wouldn't it be better to flinch? Anyway, it was a silly game that middle school kids played. All the boys do, at least. I'm not sure if the girls do that. I'm guessing not. However, it was a perceived external threat, right? And lots of things are like that we perceive as an external threat. Now, there are some things that are absolutely external threats. You're standing in the gas station, somebody walks in with a gun, that's a perceived external threat, and it's probably time to do something, right? Fight or flight, right? So we use this built-in system, and a lot of people don't like this idea, like, I don't want to be afraid of anything. However, fear is useful. Fear is that built-in system that helps preserve life for us. So there's a really great function for being afraid. Now, just like that guy holding the snake, he learned and understands that snakes maybe are defensive and they're going to do what they can to preserve their life. And so this snake had been agitated and freaked out by this guy, but he also wasn't freaking out, and he also didn't take the snake biting him to mean that he should get angry at the snake, although we do sometimes give interesting meanings to situations. So rather than getting mad at the snake for doing what its natural tendencies were, which is to defend itself and to bite because of it, he just kept talking and was calm about it and basically was used to the little pinch, I guess, that the snake was giving to him. And so an interesting turn of events, he gave a different meaning to the whole situation. Now, for those of you that are old enough to remember, Steve Irwin was like that as well. He used to go around and mess with the crocodiles, and he was the crocodile hunter, right? And he would interact with all sorts of animals and try to educate the world that the animals were doing what their instincts were. And so as long as you didn't piss them off and as long as you didn't threaten their well-being or their ability to preserve their life, then usually you were in pretty good shape. And he proved that by how he interacted with those animals. He gave it new meaning. And for all of us, we have things that we are afraid of. It could be spiders or could be clowns. I don't know. But whatever it is you're afraid of, if you would like to not be afraid of that thing anymore, you have to give it new meaning. For example, spiders. And this isn't a quick fix, but if you're afraid of spiders, you have to stop and think about a few things. One of them is you're probably 100 times bigger than that spider. So that's one. Two, as last I checked, there's only 3 poisonous spiders known to the United States. So if you're listening to this in the United States, I believe there's only 3, maybe more than that, so don't quote me on it, but not very many. And so maybe the poisonous spider that you might be deathly afraid of doesn't even exist in your area. You should probably look, right? But the point of it is, even if it was poisonous, the odds are we have a cure for it right away, and you're not going to die from a spider bite. Most spiders are deathly afraid of getting squished, right? So they're going to bite, and they're going to try to take care of themselves and preserve their life. But they're probably just as afraid as you are. Well, that's not maybe true, because maybe spiders don't have fear built in. Maybe what they have is a defense mechanism. And so they don't have the meaning of fear, right? But you have a fear, maybe of spiders, maybe of clowns, maybe of skydiving. I don't know what your fear is. In some instances, you can address the fear. In some instances, you may just need to deal with that fear and learn to overcome it. And in some instances, maybe you should keep the fear in order to preserve life. So you want to keep that as an idea. But understand this, fear is just another emotion. It's another emotion that you do. And with autonomic response, you can be quick on the uptake for being afraid of something. And if you'd like to not be afraid of that thing, then you're probably going to have to practice, and you're probably going to have to get in the way of it, just like that guy with the snake. He learned over time that he didn't have to be afraid of that snake. And that's just how it was. So think about that, and think about how and what fears you might have. What fears do you have? What fears do you have a hard time getting over? And are they something that you maybe want to overcome? Maybe something you want to lean into and learn about and figure out how to manage that fear so that the first thing that doesn't come to your mind is a meaning of threat, right? Maybe it's something you don't want to be afraid of anymore, and so you want to overcome it. So you have to give it new meaning, and then you can start to work on how to undo that fear. Now be careful, because obviously it's useful. And so you don't want to get rid of a fear that is useful, right? Because you might need it for something. Now, it's important you don't delete fear. That's a bad idea. You need it. It's a life-preserving emotional state, right? So we need it. It's useful for some things. And some things it's not. So take a look and figure it out. If you have any questions about fear, send it in. I'd love to hear from you. info@magicforlife.com. And, send me what things scare you. What things are you afraid of? And, we'll respond and let you know how you can address them and how you can give different meaning. Because sometimes from your own perspective, it's so hard to give a new meaning to something that scares you, right? And so maybe you just need some different perspective. Anyway, that's it for today about fear, and hope you learned a little bit of something about how fear works and how it interacts. And honestly, if you go and you address some of these things, I can go to the pet store with my daughter and hold snakes now, because they're really not that scary, and you got to know what you're dealing with. So obviously you don't want to go and hold a cobra, let it wrap around your hand, because they're a little dangerous. But there are snakes that are not, and so if you know what you're dealing with, then you can let go of the fear and enjoy a new situation in a new state. Anyway, we'll talk to you next time. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. Please don't forget to subscribe and share the podcast with somebody you know that might want to learn more about their emotions. We'll see you next time. Take care. Hey lifers, we expect upgrades to the base operating functions of the things like our phones, cars, and even refrigerators. Why then has it not been made a priority that we upgrade the operating systems of our emotional states? We dance around the subject of emotional mastery from a young age. We have so much more knowledge in today's world, yet we're still teaching outdated methods of emotional education, if any are being taught at all. It's time for a change. It's time for an upgrade to our emotional education. Let me help you learn how to do that. Pick up your free copy of Every Minute at everyminutebook.com.